Andrew Little, you got out of politics. What are you doing? Why do you want back in?
Yeah, look, I was very happy getting out of a public life, getting back into law. I've been thoroughly enjoying that. I was asked at the end of last year to consider the Wellington mayoralty. I wasn't interested at that point. But since then, I've seen what's happened over the airport share sale proposal, the regional deal issue, and a number of other things. And then the number of people who were approaching me, the intensity of their approaches, the breadth of people who were approaching me led me to have another think. And in the end, I thought, actually, there is something wrong with Wellington City Council at the moment. I think there's a real crisis of confidence in the city. And I thought I've got some skills that could make a difference. And so I'm putting myself forward.
What is wrong with Wellington?
I think there's a lack of direction. I think there's, when you look at what's going on, the airport share sale was one thing, the Reading Cinema Complex proposal was another. All quite off the chart things for a city council led by, meant to be sort of progressive forces. Then you see community facilities like Candela Pool, like Begoni House, being slated for demolition or closed down. Community facilities are what makes a city. It's what makes strong communities that make up a city. And then you look at the kind of level of disgruntlement in the city, real pressure because of the public service cuts and other things on retail and hospitality, and no apparent acknowledgement of that, no changing the pace of things or slowing things down, or just acknowledging that actually the city is under pressure for a whole bunch of other reasons, not of the council's making, but something that the council should be responding to. And where I get to is I think the council is out of touch and needs different leadership.
How much of it is the council's making? How much of that disgruntlement, I'm thinking cycleways, for instance, I'm thinking Golden Mile, the businesses have been really, really vocal about it. How much of it do you think the disgruntlement around the city is the council not listening?
That's the overwhelming message I get, particularly from businesses. The council just doesn't listen. And I think that's, look, the cycleways, I know they're controversial. It's a good thing for the cyclists, and cyclists should be able to move freely around the city. But for heaven's sake, somebody from the council has got to be out there talking to business, not just once or twice, and not just in the consultation exercise, but constantly keeping in touch, letting business know what's coming up. I think there's something about, too, the council, when it is implementing things like cycleways or the Golden Mile, is think about the disruption on business and on traffic and other things. And let's think of a way we can minimise that. And let's not barge ahead, particularly as conditions have changed in the last couple of years. Conditions have got more fragile for business. Let's maybe say, okay, we've got to take that into account, and let's change what we're doing. Let's add a bit of adaptability to the circumstances.
Okay. You've said you want to fix the pipes, invest in the swimming pools and the libraries. All sounds great, but to borrow a phrase from John Key in the debate, show me the money. How are you going to do it?
Yeah, and I think there's a question about the way the council is doing its financial planning at the moment. It seems to me, from what I've seen and read, there's a lot of paying up front for a lot of stuff that actually could be paid for over time.
So debt?
Well, no, it's more about phasing things, phasing payments. I think hiking rates by 30% over a 2-year period just shouldn't happen. It makes things more unaffordable for Wellington. And so a bit of rethinking about that. Look, I think the council's got to look to its own expenditure as well, not just the capital stuff, but its own operations. I think there's a lot more the council can do to get a grip on its own spending. So those sorts of things, I think, can make a difference.
What level of rate rise are you comfortable with within 2 years?
Well, certainly not the levels we've been seeing, not the 30% over 2 years. I think even the 12% scheduled for the next year is very high. And I just think, and this
should be closer to inflation?
Yeah, I think that's a good measure. I think the council's just got to be aware that the cost of living is still an issue for a lot of people. Wellington is becoming unaffordable, and so rates rises of that magnitude are out of step with every other kind of cost rise. Council's got to be cognizant of that.
When we're talking about the pipes, which has been a major issue for Wellingtonians, everyone says that's number one priority for them, right? Fix the pipes. Put a time frame on it. How quickly do you think a leak should be fixed outside of someone's house?
as quickly as possible. It shouldn't be weeks or months. It should be at the most days. But I think look, where this is all going to, the new water entity, I support it. It's been consulted over at the moment. I think the challenge for council is, once that change happens, is to make sure that council, as well represented, is getting the best for Wellington City, and can be sure that service commitments like a quick turnaround and getting leaks fixed is something that can be relied on.
So under an Andrew Little mayoralty, how long would it take for you to get to a point where you could say we're getting leaks fixed in days rather than weeks?
Look, I can't say that, because the direction we're heading is a new water entity. It's going to take over all of that responsibility. So I would want to make sure that the service commitments that we get out of the new entity are going to meet those sorts of standards. But we've got to get there first.
You mentioned Begonia House before. Why do you want to save that? Have you been there lately? What's special about Begonia House?
Well, I do try to get to the botanical gardens at least a couple of times a year, but that's been a long-standing feature and facility and a place where people go. The idea that we decide that because of a whole lot of other things we're doing, we're just going to rip it down, demolish it, just seems crazy to me. That's a place where a lot of people enjoy going, get enjoyment out of, and I think some priorities are wrong. Actually, those are the facilities we should be cherishing, not just putting on the burner.
You've said Wellingtonians don't want asset sales. Is there nothing on the council's balance sheet that you think could go to free up money for the likes of fixing pipes or building libraries or swimming pools? Well,
they say, they talk about some of the land assets and the lease assets that they've got. I think there's an air of unreality about some of their financial planning. So the idea that we have to build up this self-insuring war chest of over $2 billion on the basis that if there's a major earthquake and a lot of damage, the central government won't help out, I think is nuts. I think the central government, as it has done with Christchurch, as it's done with in every other major disaster event, going back to Edgecombe earthquake in 1987, the government will assist, the central government will assist, and we shouldn't be planning on the basis that the central government won't be there. So I think there's a bit of overstating the size of the problem and planning for something that a situation that's unlikely to arise, namely central government not helping out. Those are the sorts of things, I think, questions that need to be asked, and a bit of pushback on council officials.
Are you just going to split the left vote?
No, I don't think at all. I think the feedback I'm getting is very, very strong. It's not just from Labor, it's from a cross-section, and I've had self-avowed Green members telling me they're supporting my candidacy, a whole bunch of people right across the political spectrum. I've had community leaders, business leaders. I feel very confident that there's a high degree of support. There's no question in my mind that Wellingtonians are looking for leadership, they're looking for a different style, they're looking for a leader who can forge a constructive relationship with government, but also be able to stand up to government, say, back off, but also to give some certainty, and above all, to demonstrate that they can listen and adapt from what they've heard.
Sorry, to be clear, are you running on a Labor ticket, and do you want to?
Yes, I've nominated for the Labor candidacy. I will run my mayoral campaign. I've got a team already set up, ready to go. Obviously, I'll work closely with the Labor Party, but this is an Andrew Little Labor mayoral campaign that I am running for my mayoralty.
Would you rather be the only high-profile candidate on the left, and should you and the Greens do a deal for Tory not to run?
Look, I think the situation is, and if I just go back over the last few weeks, and just the number and range of people who have approached me, Wellingtonians want to change. They've lost confidence, and I think that is the problem with Wellington, a crisis of confidence. They want to see a change. I represent that change. I think people can see my track record. I've got a good track record in bringing disparate voices together, disparate people together, and actually getting stuff done, and sometimes in difficult circumstances. That's what I do, and that's what Wellingtonians want.
How would you rate Tory Whānau's performance as mayor?
Look, I don't want to single out any one person. The council's performance has, I think, been lacking. I think council has lost the confidence of Wellingtonians. People want to see a change. They want to see a council that listens. They want to see a council that is supporting and embracing the communities of Wellington. They want to see those long-standing challenges fixed. They know that there are, with the water, we've got to get to grips with a whole new arrangement, and they want the best deal possible. So they want somebody who can be trusted to deliver on that.
Sure. Can a change in just mayor do that though, or do you need a whole change of the council? Can you work with the people that are already on council and bring confidence back to that?
I back myself, and I think my track record is that I work with pretty much anybody. I'm pretty good at forging relationships with any manner of people, any type of person. I'm not afraid of people disagreeing with me. I welcome disagreement. I think it's a good way to get decisions. But I'm good at working with people and getting people rallied around a common position and a common cause. That's what's needed.
A lot of people point to, and you did do this with the Labour Party caucus after the coup season you had. That was a group of politicians who were all on the same team. The group of councillors are not all on the same team, are they? Can you replicate that unity with a group of people who don't actually think the same way, who have actually different goals?
Yeah, I think people who've seen me know my track record, including in Parliament. No, I work across the aisle. I work very easily. I look at, part of my job was to implement the end-of-life choice legislation once the referendum had passed. I involved David Seymour and Brooke Van Velden in that. They were very happy, as long as, for me to report to them. They didn't want to get deeply involved, but I kept them in touch with what was going on. Likewise, on some of the criminal justice reform, I reached out across the aisle on the legalising and controlling cannabis legislation. I had a cross-party group that I was dealing with, Greens, National, ACT, and people know that I can work across those lines. I know many of the councillors who will have a different political leaning to me. I see them and I get on well with them. Many of them have been in contact with me. I'm confident that I can do that.
No secret that the council has had a very turbulent relationship with central government. Did you think it was necessary to put an observer in there?
To me, I thought it was a bit of an overreaction. I'm still not sure whether that was the right thing to do. That said, it's not good for the council or the mayor to not have a constructive relationship with central government. And it kind of is that regardless of who is on the Treasury benches, actually councils have to have a good relationship with central government. And those times when central government might overreach, they've got to be able to be told that. But the starting point is going to be, look, there's some things we've got to work on in common together and to forge the relationship that can deliver that, and I can do that.
The decision of the council not to go for one of those regional deals, how much did that push your hand in considering running for the mayoralty?
It was pretty much the turning point. When I saw that, I thought that's an abdication of responsibility. From what I understood, it didn't take much. It required a fully fledged proposal. It was just to say, put your hand up and say we're interested. And that should have happened. When the central government is offering support and the opportunity to work together on something that's going to fix infrastructure, actually the council is duty bound to step up on behalf of residents to do that. That didn't happen, and that was a failure in my view.
Just returning, to an earlier point, the Golden Mile. I think you've said that maybe that should be phased.
Yeah.
Are you happy with Courtney Place right now?
Look, I think, like a lot of people, it could certainly do with an improvement. And look, the contracts, the far end of Courtney Place have been let. That's going to happen. I still think, though, when conditions change, as they have in Wellington in the last 2 years, with more businesses struggling, plenty of businesses falling over, then we've got to think about stuff that council does that causes more disruption and say, is this the right thing to be doing at this time? For me, it's all about move when there's a level of confidence to do so. Right now, business feels neglected, under pressure, and that this is the wrong thing to do. And I think that's got to be respected.
You don't get progress without disruption, though, right? If you want to fix the pipes, you're going to have to dig up half the roads in the city.
Sure, and I think when you implement something, when you execute something, you've got to engage very heavily with the people who you know are going to be disrupted. And right now, we know the people who will be most disrupted will be a lot of those businesses, retail and hospitality, who are really struggling at the moment. And I don't think it's too much to say for a project that we want is going to last decades, is to give ourselves a bit more time to say, you know what, let's just get through the current economic downturn, let's get through this high pressure period, And then when the confidence has returned a bit and economic conditions have turned up a bit, then that's the time to do the stuff that is going to be disruptive, but to do so with a level of confidence from the people who will be affected.
How are you going to re-engage with central government?
Look, I've got pretty good relations with a lot of ministers at the moment. I don't anticipate it'll be hugely difficult, but I would want to, pretty smartly get on and make sure that with central government, they know that they've got a mayor, if I'm elected, who they can deal with and deal with, reliably and with confidence.
You've got one of the positions that you've taken, though, is the reason that Wellington is in trouble is because of this government's cuts to the public service. How do you be an advocate for the citizens of Wellington, many of whom work in that public service, and also have that good relationship?
Yeah, look, having a relationship with central government from local government isn't saying we want to have a say on every decision that government's going to make. What the government chooses to do and how they run the public service is not the council's responsibility. And regardless of the impact that is, and it is clearly having an impact on the city, the council still has to have a relationship with central government. Central government's clearly offering support and financial assistance in various discrete areas. Well, let's take advantage of that. Let's do that. And we'll find out other ways to adapt to and respond to the public service cuts and help restore confidence in our local economy. But where we have the opportunity to work constructively with government, let's do so.
Okay. Can you win?
Yes.
How confident are you?
Look, the feedback I've had just in the last couple of weeks, well, I mean, longer than that, if I go back to the time, it was really 3 or 4 weeks ago where the intensity of people contacting me grew quite considerably. And then I look at the people who've been in contact with me since last week and certainly during the day-to-day, it gives me great confidence that I can win this.